Hi, today we're going to cover ear training, triads, and soloing and how they all fit together. And we're going to use this exercise to understand how they all fit together. Today's lesson is a more advanced lesson, so if you've been playing for a little bit longer, at least a few years, and you've been working on things like soloing, this will be very appropriate for what you've been doing. Before we get started, there are a couple things you will need to know and be able to play as a guitarist so that you understand all these things. A basic knowledge of open position chords, major and minor, bar chords, major and minor. Also, maybe some of these root position triads, those types of chords. Also, a good knowledge of major and minor scales and their modes, and some experience soloing on the guitar. All these things are going to provide some context and background for what we're going to do. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is how to record yourself playing some chords and work on basically hearing your way through soloing over those chords. First of all, you need to make sure you have the right equipment to do this. Most people do these days. You need an iPhone or a tablet or a laptop or a digital recorder or even maybe a looper pedal. Any of these items will help you record your guitar. You want to have a way of recording your guitar and listening back to it. Maybe some good speakers on your stereo or some headphones. And you want to be able to listen back and still hear your guitar as you're playing along with it. This is very important. We want to be able to hear these sounds that we're producing from the recording and then play on top of them. Okay, so once you have your iPhone or your tablet or whatever you're going to be recording with it, we're going to have that nearby. And what we want to talk about is basically recording yourself playing some major and minor triads. And what we're going to do is we are going to record some major and minor triads that are not diatonic. So diatonic triads belong to the same key. And normally we might do that sort of thing. But to make this a little harder, since this is an advanced lesson, we're going to take chords that aren't normally associated with each other, and we're going to play them one after another. So our consecutive chords are going to sound kind of strange, and this chord progression we will create will be a little different. So an example of a chord progression we're talking about might be something like a C major triad, and then maybe an E flat minor triad, and then maybe a G major triad, and then maybe a B flat minor triad, and then maybe an A major triad, and an E flat major triad. These chords don't really sound normal together. They don't sound diatonic. We say that they're maybe distantly related chords or unrelated chords, in fact. And the idea here is we want to play chords that do sound kind of strange together because we want to hear each sound of each chord and react to it by soloing. So what might be helpful with this list of chords is to actually write it out. You want to write down the names of the chords so you can think through, okay, what are some chords that sound like they might not work together? So come up with your list, write it out, and then record yourself playing the chords and play them pretty slowly. Think about playing them kind of out of time or at a very slow tempo. You want to have enough time to react to each chord. I usually play each chord a couple of times, and then maybe our next one. Go ahead and take a minute to record those. And once you're done, what we're going to do is listen back to the recording of the chords, and we're basically going to solo over those chords in a way. But soloing kind of in a way is adds some extra anxiety that doesn't need to be there. Think of this as just like a fun exercise where we're finding notes that sound good. We're listening to the sound of the chord and reacting and finding, okay, what notes or sounds work over the chord of the moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to limit ourselves to just the first string, just our high E string, the first string. We can play any fret on this string, the first fret all the way up to whatever our highest fret is on our guitar. Any of these frets, and you can move around in stepwise fashion, half steps, whole steps, minor thirds, major thirds, etc. You can skip around, whatever feels most comfortable. So there aren't too many limitations on where you can skip, other than you need to just stay on the first string. And if you play a note as the chord's playing, and let's say you play this note, and it doesn't sound good along with the chord that we're hearing, that's okay. That's part of the process, but you can adjust that note and find another note that works. So you can go a half step higher or a half step lower, Half step is the same as a fret, right? Or you can go a whole step higher or a whole step lower, 2 frets, right? And you might find a note that sounds better. And that's the goal here, is we're trying to find, okay, what are the sounds or the notes that maybe don't sound as good, and what are the other notes that sound better? And you're exploring these sounds and using your ears. And that's the goal here with this exercise. So as we play along, just keep in mind that mistakes are okay. This is trial and error. You're trying to figure this out. And in fact, as you hear me play it, I will play it and probably make some mistakes. And that's okay. I'm going to point them out to you and try to adjust until I find a note that works. Okay, those sound good. That note didn't sound as good. That's better. Half step higher. That doesn't sound good, right? So where do I need to go? There it is, half step higher. That sounds good. That one sounds kind of bad, right? So how can I adjust that? Down a half step. So I played that one. That one didn't sound good. I adjust it. Okay, next chord. That one sounds good now over this chord. That one doesn't sound great. Let's see the half step higher. That doesn't sound good, right? There we go. Now I found the good notes. There's a good note, right? That one doesn't sound good. There's the good note. That's a bad note. That one doesn't sound good. There's a better note. All right, so we'll stop there. So, especially towards the end, I definitely made some mistakes, right? And that's okay. That's part of this process. As you do it at home, as all of us do it, you'll make some mistakes, especially when these chords are so unrelated. These are kind of not normal chord progressions that we hear in kind of the average pop or rock or even other styles of music, the average pop or rock song or jazz song. They're different kind of chord progressions. So that makes it very challenging. And hopefully you're kind of hearing your way through this and identifying, okay, is this good? Is this bad? Do I like this sound better than the other? And as you go on with this exercise, you can continue and play it on other strings. So take the same recording and go on to the second string and do the same exercise on the second string, confining yourself to just that string. Then the third string, same thing there, and all the rest of the strings individually. And then after a while, you can try to do it on all 6 strings, where you say, okay, now I can play any string, any fret. And that opens up a lot of possibilities. As you can imagine, that's a lot more difficult to do. So I would start with the 1 string at a time. That's a good starting point. And if you find that this exercise is too difficult to do, which it is quite difficult, you can kind of take a step back, and that's okay. And you can record yourself playing diatonic chords. In other words, you can record yourself playing an easier chord progression, something in a key. So say maybe the key of C major. You record yourself playing the C major chord, the D minor chord, and the E minor chord. Skip around to some other chords in that key and record that, and it'll be a lot easier to do this same exercise. So that might be a good place to start if this other way of doing it was a lot more difficult. But otherwise, enjoy the exercise, have fun with it, enjoy the process, and happy practicing.